Hey guys, this is Camfrey15 and I'm back at it with another video for you guys, and I'm back with another fairy tale arc review video for you guys. And we are finally here at the final arc of the series. Man, it's been a long time, a very long coming to watch this arc. And it's been a long weekly type of series going on, rewatching the entire series of Fairy Tale, and freaking just watching these episodes over and over and over again, and then freaking coming out making these videos after the arc, and then talking about them with you guys. Now, finally, it's damn near coming to an end. Technically, you guys got one more week left because this is split into a two-part episode, or yeah, a two-part arc review. Like all the other big arcs we saw, the last few arcs. But yeah, we're finally here at the Alvarez Empire arc, which is the final arc of Fairy Tale. Which is still crazy in its own right. Like the fact that it is the final true arc of the series. It is really just like, wow, crazy, huh? But the thing is, this arc is very controversial for various reasons. And even in my past arc reviews, I've made mentions to this arc of some elements in this arc that I do not like. Like this arc, like I said, is very controversial, not only in the fan base of Fairy Tale, but even just for an individual viewer like me. I get pretty, mixed with how I feel about the Alvarez Empire arc. I'll say it morally in my part 2 review, but I do think the Alvarez Empire arc is a solid end to the Fairy Tale story. It's just not the ending I probably would take it. I would have probably had a lot more stakes taken, and stuff like that. Well, the stakes were high, but some of the moves Mashima made in this arc, I would not agree. There's too many damn bait and switches in terms of deaths. Now, I can understand in case of Gajil and Juvia why you'd keep them alive. But guys like Makarov, even with Ichi at the end, which will all be discussed in part 2, I think the Gajil bait and switch only will occur here in this part. But as for the other three, it's kind of, it's just very mixed. And then some choices they decide to make, obviously with the fact that Acnologia is the final villain they have to overcome instead of Zareth. I kind of disagree with that as well, but it is what it is. We'll get into all that stuff when I get to those points. But yes, we are here with the Alvarez Empire arc. It is the final arc of the original series of Fairy Tale, before it hits the sequel series, Fairy Tale 100 Year Quest. So again, like I said, with my freaking Grand Magic Games arc and Tartarus arc, this will be a two-part arc review, with next week's part 2 video of the Alvarez Empire arc being the last. So the manga chapters I'm discussing let me just, in the grand scheme of things, say the total amount of chapters and total amount of episodes for the Alvarez Empire arc as a whole. This is the longest arc in Fairy Tale, surprisingly, shocking enough. You would think Grand Magic Games or even the Taros, they're one of the longest, but Alvarez Empire arc is the longest arc in the series. So in terms of the entire arc as a whole, the Alvarez Empire consists of manga chapters 438 to 545 and anime episodes 285 to 328. Now, for this respective video, for the manga chapters and episodes I'm covering chapters 438 to 495 and anime episodes 285 to 305. Which is obviously the start, and it gets to the part where essentially, the second half essentially picks up, which I kind of stopped there. But yeah, let's get into this. So obviously after the events of the Avatar arc, with the whole fact that now Fairy Tale is now, reconnected again. They are brought back together. They're rebuilding the guild hall. And the thing is, while Levy's doing the paperwork to make them an official guild yet again, Levy's wondering, okay, who's going to be the guild master? Because one, Makarov isn't here and we need an active guild master. So the thing is, everybody ends up choosing Urza to be the guild master, which I guess you can say in a way is kind of a foreshadowing type of element they're taking there. I've always thought that the next guild people that whenever Makarov finally, and what I mean is good, is dead for good and he's not coming back. The people I definitely could see as guild master are maybe guild arts, probably not, but it would more than likely be it would probably be between Loxus or Urza. More likely Urza because she essentially carries the embodiment of what Fairy Tail is. So listen, I do have a feeling if they ever were to do a Fairy Tail, a third sequel series of Fairy Tail where it's about the kids of the main cast members we all love and know, I definitely could see it to where Urza's the guild master in the future of the guild. But yes. Now this is when we see Mesh show up and he's like, okay, yeah, our former master Makarov, he's in danger, and stuff like that. Now, this is when Mesh actually shows Urza Fairy Tail's darkest secret, the Lumen Histoire. And essentially we find out that Natsu Company followed them behind. Now, the reason why Mesh says Makarov is in trouble is because of the mission Makarov gave him. Now, the thing is, though we find out the true reasoning behind why Mesh was in the Magic Council. The reason why Makarov had Mesh in the Magic Council was to find out, how the tensions between the western continent of Alvarez was going on with obviously the continent of Ishgar and everything. And he wanted to know more about the Alvarez Empire as well. Now, after the Tartaros arc, shortly after the Tartaros arc, Makarov made the idea of disbanding the guild because he saw Alvarez as a threat that Fairy Tail could not overcome. And it's something that he did not want to put, obviously, the members of Fairy Tail in harm's way again, like literally he did in Tartaros. And if you remember from my Tartaros arc, I said Tartaros arc was big from the impact that it was at that time the toughest opponent Fairy Tail has fought, where to the point that that entire freaking dark guild of Tartaros almost broke each and every damn member in their own way and enforced Makarov's hand of disbanding the guild because of it, because he didn't want to see his loved ones be punished and sacrificed like that over and over again. Because let's be honest, they've been fighting them against all these different types of bad guys throughout the rest of the story. And Makarov's like, I can't have my children going through this again. Nor against an entire empire. When guess what? They'll come out of this probably dead. And stuff like that. Now, we find out actually too that Alvarez way before the Fairy Tail storyline even started, they actively actually tried to invade Ishgar. They tried to take over Ishgar and invade it a long time ago in the year 781, which is way before the events of the Fairy Tail story. I think it's only like about a few years. I don't have the timeline popped up in my head nor on my notes. But I do know that Alvarez tried to invade Ishgar essentially a few years before the start of the story, which is crazy to find out. So we also find out that Alvarez has had an ongoing issue with the country of Ishgar as a whole standard anyways. And it was for the exact same reason we see here, and that was to obtain the Lumen Histoire. But their invasion eventually failed. Now, Magara said they failed because the Magic Council had weapons like the Aetherion cannon and even face it at their disposal. So it essentially made Alvarez back up. They're like, okay, yeah, let's not fuck with this shit, and stuff like that. Now, but obviously Makarov, saying this to Mess after the events of the Taros arc, he's like, well, now that the Magic Council is now dead, they're now gone. Alvarez has nothing stopping them now because they can just come in and invade us. whenever they please, because we have no we have no magic council and stuff like that. We find out that they have essentially that the Alvarez, country as a whole, combined to make this whole country. And that was because of 700 guilds combined between the regular and their dark guilds, and their magic council came together to create the Alvarez Empire, which has men over damn near 1,000, which is freaking insane to begin with. Now, Makarov's whole plan was to negotiate with Alvarez to not invade, and his backup plan, if they refuse, would be to use the power of the Lumen Histoire. So we flash back to the present. Now the plan is Urza and company have to go to the Alvarez Empire to go find Makarov and bring him back home and save him, essentially, and stuff like that. Now, Gajil and a group of his people are going to go look for the Thunder Legion, which I believe that group was Gajil, Levy, Lily, Kana, and the Strauss family. So yeah. Now, eventually it gets to the point where Fairy Tail's an official guild again. Also, we get some interesting things. We see the 4 emperors of Ishgard. The third ranked member of the 10 Wizard Saints, Wolfham, says right now, the times are serious because of the tension between their country and Alvarez. And then we see another emperor of Ishgard, which is the second-rate wizard saint, Hyperion. There's a reason why they're worried, is because the top-ranked wizard who used to be in Ishgard, God Serena, actually, defected from their country and went and sided with Alvarez. Like, he just upped and left, and he was the strongest wizard in all of Ishgard. And that's why the 4 emperors of Ishgard, they're like, we're screwed if Alvarez tries to invade us and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, Alvarez has a leader called Emperor Spriggan, and he has 12 followers called the Spriggan 12. We later find out who Emperor Spriggan is and some members of the Spriggan 12. Now, Urza and the others on their way to the country of Alicatasia in the west, but Mest says they have to make a quick stop at Caracol Island because Mest actually had a spy. But when they get to Caracol Island, they see Alvarez Empire logo, ships with the Alvarez Empire logo, and that they're doing check-ins, which shows that they kind of taken over Caracol Island. We actually get a funny thing here. We actually find out over the 1-year time skip, Wendy has motion sickness now, and stuff like that, which is very hilarious that her body is now matured into the standpoint now she has motion sickness, and now because of it, she can't use her Troya spell to make her feel better, because just it's funny and stuff like that. Also, too, another interesting tidbit for the Dragon Slayers we can essentially hear, we find out, is that now Natsu, Gajil, and Wendy, they all have significantly better hearing, and they can hear from damn near long distances, and stuff like that. That's how Gajil was able to understand or hear what the whole plan that Urza's group was doing. And that's like, you know what? Let's go get the Thunder Legion back. That's why he did that. And that's why you see time and time in this arc again, especially in the final episode, where literally Wendy is hearing everything going on. She has essentially super hearing now. So that's pretty cool to see that and stuff like that. Now, Natsu and Wendy hear that the guards are saying that they are going to track down a spy, but they have not found him yet. So they had to get to the island and find the spy immediately. Now, when they get to the island, Urza says we cannot start fights because that's only going to increase the ongoing tension and stuff like that. But they end up fighting when this kid is about to be killed by the Alvarez soldiers. While Wendy, Carla, and Mess, they end up looking for the spy. Now, after taking care of the soldiers, the Natsu company get attacked by Marin Hollow, who is an Alvarez Empire army member from the Brandish division. Urza and Lucy try to fight back, but they can't because Marin his magic deals with canceling out spatial magic. And people use spatial magic around him, it won't work. So essentially the regular people. Urza and Lucy, they get taken away to his space, his little areas to mess around with. And Natsu and Gray, they try to fight Marin, but they easily get defeated and stuff like that. But then one of the Spriggan 12 members shows up, and her name is Brandish, who, my God, is one of the sexiest looking fairy tale chicks we have seen, mostly because all she wears is bikini. And again, like I said, Brandish is a very funny personality, and she's hot too. So yeah. Now Gray and Natsu, they're actually feel Brandish's power level, and they're like, oh, so these people are like that. Well, that's just wonderful. Anyways, cutting from that, we cut over to the Hot Springs team. Gajil finds out where Loxus and the Thunder Legion are, and they're actually in the Blue Pegasus Guild. So over the 1 year time skip, they were chilling around in Blue Pegasus. Going back to cutting over to the Brandish stuff. Brandish really only showed up on Caracol Island for the mangoes, which this one guy shot was selling. And she also tells Marin to let Lucy and Urza go. Now, Marin doesn't want to listen to Brandish, but essentially, Brandish shows off her power, and Marin releases them with utter ease and stuff like that. In the meantime, she also changes the island, Caracol Island, to a tiny little rock, essentially, and makes it small. So she has magic that can increase or small you in, or increase your size or get you smaller, which is very, very crazy to say the least, and stuff like that. Now, Brandish tells them, like, listen, Makarov is still alive, and she knows that they're fairy tale members. She's like, listen, you guys probably should not come to Alvarez, especially if you want to start a war. And Urz is kind of shocked that she knew the plan, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, thanks to Best, the others are essentially transported to their spies, to the spy, and they're in an underwater location. And we find out their spies is members of Crime Sorcier, which Angel is in this little kind of underwater ship thing called the Olympia. So we find out that Angel was Mess spy because it makes sense. Mess has been in contact with Crime Sorcier since they became a whole thing there. And she's going to take him to the Alvarez Empire to get them to save Makarov and stuff like that. Now, in the capital city of Alvarez and Visterion, Makarov and Yajil talk about the return of Fairy Tale, because they overhear that in the Western continent. Also, we find out that Emperor Spriggan has been gone for about 1 year because he was on a journey to find what life really meant. And essentially, he rose to power in Alvarez by overthrowing every damn guild, which goes to show you that this guy is freaking strong. Now, Makarov tells Yajil that in Ishgard, Emperor Spriggan is known for being hostile in nature, but Yajil says that, well, no, that's kind of false because Emperor Spriggan, man, he's a good ass dude. He's really caring and stuff like that. And then obviously Emperor Spriggan finally returns to the Alvarez Empire, and there's a huge celebration, a huge parade for him. And when Makarov sees him, he sees that Emperor Spriggan is none other than the Black Wizard Zareth, which is shocking enough, to say the least. Now, the Spriggan 12 eventually welcome back Zareth to Alvarez, and Zareth eventually has a discussion alone with Makarov. He tells him about his journey over the 400 years that had got him to this point in time, from planning and expecting to rule over Alvarez, and the fact about the Dragon King Festival, as well as how to defeat Acnologia. So we find out that over the 400 years of Zareth being alive, he was the guy that created the Alvarez Empire from the jump. He did all this. He created them, which, hey, for a guy that's pretty much immortal over 400 years, it makes sense to why it's like, you know what? I got nothing else better to do. Let's make my own damn country, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, Makarov asks Zareth, why did you not invade Ishgard back then? And essentially, Zareth's like, well, it's because the forces we had back then weren't nearly as strong as we have now. Also, he goes on to say that the Lumen Histoire is really called the Fairy Heart, which is greater than the 3 grand spells of frickin' Fairy Tale. Wonderful. Yes, yes, yes. Now, Zeref says he's going to invade Ishgard to retrieve the Fairy Heart and to do it so he can do it to complete his goal, which is essentially complete annihilation of everything. And the fact that the Dragon King Festival is starting officially now because Acnologia, the Black Wizard, because it's between Acnologia, the Black Wizard, and the Mortals and stuff like that. Now Makarov is like telling Zeref, like, look, I'm not going to allow you to do all this stuff. And Zeref's like, okay, fine. Well, you're just going to die. It's not like you're going to make it out of here alive, but it's okay. But before Makarov kicks the bucket, quote unquote, this is the first time in this arc foreshadowing here that Makarov is going to die, which he should have died in this arc. So Mez actually shows up, saves Makarov, and Makarov tells the other Natsu and the others that he blames himself for disbanding Fairy Tail as a whole and just wasting time from the standpoint that, guess what? Alvarez was going to go to war with them regardless of how, he felt and stuff like that. Now, Agil, who is actually a family relative of Yagil, actually attacks them, and he tries to kill them using quicksand. But Makarov tries to sacrifice himself again. But that's when we see Loxus ends up showing up and saving them. And we see Loxus along with Gajo and the others using the Christina from Blue Pegasus manages to save them all, and they return back to Fairy Tail. Now, we get back to Fairy Tail. Makarov tells everyone that he is sorry for disbanding the guild and everything, and the fact that Fairy Tail is about to go to war with Alvarez. Natsu says that they will defeat Zeref and the others like everyone else before them, and Makarov also tells everyone about the Fairy Heart, and Mavis comes and then explains everything, including the relationship she and Zeref had. Now, we get a flashback back to the past. Now, during the Second Trade War, it was just insane, haywire, and craziness and stuff like that. Now, Mavis at one point did not like the fact that there was all this war and lives were essentially lost. Now, eventually the war ended in a ceasefire, which I believe we already know from at the end of the Fairy Tail Zero arc, where they did a quick rundown of the build up to Fairy Tail's creation and stuff like that. Now, in the year of X696, Mavis ran into Zeref again, and they talked about what had happened since they last met. Mavis told Zeref that she used the law spell and when he looked deeply into her, he saw that now Mavis had the curse of contradiction, the same thing that he has. Now, Mavis didn't believe him at all, and Mavis calls Zeref a horrible, detestable liar, and that you're just saying that and stuff like that. And she just leaves. Now, Zeref says the reason why anyone the reason why anyone around her hasn't died yet was because the feeling she had during war was not really justified. In other words, she was conflicted with how she felt about life and death and how life is and what matters to, and what means the most to her and stuff like that, and things that she loves. Now, Zeref, he's like, you know what? I'm actually happy that we're finally, two souls on the same path and stuff like that. Now, when Mavis essentially ran away because she was in utter disgust and stuff like that. Now, when she went back to the guild, Yuri is about to have his wife, Rita, give birth to, obviously, who we later find out is Makarov. And we find out that, well, Mavis is the one that ended up naming Makarov. So it's nice. It's very adorable, very cute, and stuff like that. But the thing is, Rita ends up dying because Mavis had put in too much love and was too much, happy for new life being born. And in response for that, the curse took effect and took away Rita. Now the thing is, because of this traumatized Mavis so much, especially what Zeref recently told her, she ended up abandoning Fairy Tale and running away for a year, and she ends up running to Zeref again. Now Mavis at this point in time is just a person that has no soul. She's a shell of her former self. Um, and essentially she has the same thing of just wishing to die. Now Zeref explains what he's been up to all this time, saying like how he's created the Aetherius, in other words, his the book of the demons of the book of Zeref to eventually come and kill him, as well as creating, his involvement in the Alvarez Empire. Which he says, like, to me, this is all a damn game. Nothing much is anything. Now, as he explains his reasons, Mavis notices that his thoughts contradict each other while he is suddenly having one of his breakdowns, including his lifetime wish for Natsu to end his life, because we find out that now, obviously, we know that Natsu's EMD. Then all of a sudden, he switches to want his brother to kill his brother instead. Now, Mavis vows to help Zeref to find a way to end their curses, and they end up proclaiming a mutual love. And the thing is, Mavis kind of tells Zeref that now we are the same, I have the same strong feelings towards you. And the thing is, Zeref and Mavis eventually kiss, but because Zeref is like, I'm glad and I'm happy that someone can understand where I'm coming from, he ends up killing Mavis because his curse of contradiction overpowered his. We'll find out the reasoning later in the next part of the Alvarez Empire arc review of why that was the case. But essentially it was just because his love morally outpowered Mavis's love for him and stuff like that. And because of Mavis dying, it put Zeref into further darkness. Zeref ended up taking Mavis's dead body back to the guild, and over time we see Prek tries to revive Mavis, but it doesn't work. And essentially because of Mavis's death, Zeref hardened his heart so he doesn't have to feel the pain again of what it's like to lose somebody he loves. Also too, the fairy heart is essentially also find out that the fairy heart is a countless blast like the Aetherion cannon, and it can continuously be fired because it has everlasting magic, and that's why Alvarez wants their hands on it. Now, Mavis essentially apologizes to the entire guild for putting the current members of the guild at fault for her sin, but everybody else says, listen, there is no sin in loving someone. Natsu says that he'll be the one to take out Zeref because he has a secret weapon. I don't believe, now I put some members on the Spriggan 12. Now they're not all of them. Some of them are, like, for example, the Nation Destroyer Brandish Mew, the Winter General Invel, the Warrior Queen Demario Yesta, the Sand King Agiel Ramil, the Wizard King August, and no, guys, no, not the Wizard King Julius, not the Wizard King title from Black Clover, the Wizard King here in August, because he knows everything about magic. So, no, they do not steal something. Well, I guess you can say maybe they stole something from Black Clover. I don't know. But no, he isn't the Wizard King. The Wizard King title doesn't stay the same like it does in Black Clover. Anyways, God Serena, Bloodman, Nineheart, Judge Wall Eto. I think those are only some of them. Those are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like, there was only 9 members we saw there. So yeah, others end up showing up anyways. So yeah. Now, in this meeting, Zeref is going to launch a full-scale invasion on Ishkar, and even Acnologia prepares for the battle, knowing about the Dragon King Festival starting up and everything. Now, while everyone is preparing for the incoming fight, Wendy tells Urza that she wants a chance to protect her. Gray also tells Juvia that he'll tell her something at the end of the war, which seems to be something important. Now, all of a sudden, Alvarez ends up attacking Magnolia with Agiel's force. Now, the Dragon Slayers and Bisca, using the Jupiter cannon, takes down a majority of the ships. But when the Dragon Slayers get on board, they're obviously their motion sickness is bad, so they can't fight him. But that's when Urza shows up and fights Agil herself. There is also an enchantment by Freed, essentially creating a barrier around Magnolia to keep the enemies out. Now, what happens is the Dragon Slayers get sent off the ship. They end up fighting the forces of Kareem and Bakel, which are just two, fodder characters. Now we see Wall is able to actually get past this enchantment barrier, and we see Mary Jane, Lizana, and Elfman go take care of him or try to go fight him and stuff like that. Now, Lucy ends up encountering Brandish in her own bathroom, and Brandish has been telling Lucy, listen, I've been thinking about you ever since I first came across you on Caracol Island. Now, Warren actually sees that there are 300 airships are heading from the north with 3 more Spriggan Knights on them. Later, there was a report of 300 more ships with 3 more Spriggans from the south. If that wasn't bad enough, he finds over 1 million more forces are coming from the east with 3 more Spriggan Knights. Essentially, the whole thing Zareth did was kind of entrap them on all different fronts to essentially, I guess you can say, keep them in. It's like if you play the Far Cry series, you have to take over a different region in the west, the south, the east, around the whole, essentially around the whole area where the main bad guy is located at. It's something like that. To say the least, where you just can't channel them in. Essentially, they're playing territory warfare here. Capture the most territory, so then the little last remaining thing, it will be an easy takeover, and stuff like that. So, yeah, which is interesting. Now, the Strauss family actually comes to help out Juvia and Gray, who are fighting Wall, and we see that Mary Jane actually has a transformation magic to transform into Sayla. If you remember Sayla, she's obviously one of the demons from the Book of Zareth, from Tartaros. So yeah. Now Lucy is actually forced by Brandish to get in the bathtub with her, which is a very sexy scene to say the least. And eventually Brandish is like, "You're the daughter of Layla Hartfilia, and I know who you are. And guess what? Layla killed my mother, and I'm going to kill you, and it's only fair." But as Brandish is trying to shrink down her own apartment, essentially the thing, it comes out where she comes out. Kana eventually comes to Lucy's rescue and essentially takes Marin out because Marin's there with Lucy canceling out her spatial magic. And Kana comes and helps her. And after that whole thing happens. Also, too, with the whole standpoint of Marin's spatial magic, it's affecting Urza and her fight against Agil from equipping. When Marin's taken care of, Urza ends up equipping into her wind armor, and Urza ends up defeating Agil, even though he puts up a sandstorm, and ends up defeating Agil using this light armor, which helps Biska be able to see where Urza's at, and she takes down the ships using the Jupiter cannon, and stuff like that. So yeah. Now Lucy and Kana easily defeat Brandish, and they capture her as a prisoner. Now, while fighting Wall, Gray realizes that when he's fighting him, that they're gonna have to fight the walls that Wall has weaknesses to, and that's how they can overcome him, and stuff like that. Essentially, the Wall goes to Cardia Cathedral. He fights the Thunder Legion, and then all of a sudden, Ichia joins the fray, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very freaking funny to see Ichia in this, and anyways, it goes to go on now. This whole thing happens. Nelson says the Western forces are done, and Ichia and Freed end up defeating Wall together. And then Wall ends up blowing up. We find out that the Wall we saw in Magnolia, that wasn't his real body. That was actually just fake bodies. The real body is on this far distant ship. And he actually tries to fire a beam that could destroy the entire guild hall, as we know it. But using the Christina, Ichia blocks the attack. At the same time, Ichia said he also told everyone within Fiore the country of Fiore that they need to stand up and fight for Fairy Tail so they can come together and defeat the Alvarez Empire. So this is when we kind of see the rest of the members we've seen in the past arcs all contribute, which I love. Like I said, I've told you way back in the Grand Magic Games arc that these characters like Sting and Rogue and these characters we've seen in the Grand Magic Games arc, they all come back to in the later stages arcs of Fairy Tail to help and find a way to help Fairy Tail out in their own ways. I really do appreciate that these are characters that they're just not one and done characters for the Grand Magic Games arc alone. They actually bring these characters back, and they actually even have the Fairy Tail members consistently interact with these characters over and over again, which I definitely do like, and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, now that the rest of Fiore is now getting involved in the war, there are 3 different teams aiding the cause. In the north, Sabretooth and Blue Pegasus members with the Strauss family, Levy, Lily, and Gajil will go to help them. Loxus will fight Wall's real body in the south. And in the south that goes with Lamia Scale and Mermaid Hill. Wendy, Carla, Juvia, Gray, and Urza will also go there to back them up. The 4 emperors of Ishgar are going to go fight the forces in the east since they're the strongest. Natsu and Happy ends up going to go fight Zareth in the west, and Lucy and Connor stay watch over Brandish. Now, when Natsu gets to the west, he fights them in the army. Now, Zareth eventually confronts Natsu, and they start fighting. Now, we find out the reason why Natsu wanted to fight Zareth is he had a secret weapon. And when he takes off the weapon on his arm, we find out that it's the last true bit of power from Igneo. And essentially, this makes Zareth happy because he's like, I can finally die peacefully now, and stuff like that. All of a sudden, when it looks like Zareth is going to kick the bucket, he starts thinking Anna, Layla, Mavis, and his brother Natsu. Now, Zareth is able to take the attack, but Natsu essentially gears up to do one more final attack to finish him off. That's when Zareth eventually reveals to Natsu, listen, your true identity is Zareth. My true identity is Zareth Dragoneel. I'm your older brother. And also, too, you are the demon from the Book of Zareth, my greatest creation, E&D. Now, Natsu doesn't believe it because he remembers that E&D was created by the Tardos Guild. But Zareth says, yeah, that's because of Mardgir's delusions that made you think that he was created by Tardos. Please, you must be crazy. Actually, you had a hand in creating Tardos anyway, so it's okay. Now, Natsu still refuses to believe anything Zareth is saying, but when Zareth actually attacks the Book of E&D, Natsu actually gets hurt in the process. When Zareth was on his quest to bring Natsu back to life, he ran into Igneo, who he considered a friend of at the time, and Igneo promised to teach Natsu dragon slaying magic. 400 years ago, in order to defeat Acnologia, the dragons decided to have their own dragon slayers and train them. Then they went into Natsu, Wendy, Sting, and Rogue, using the Dragon Soul and Wenge the Future. We all know that whole story. Obviously, when we find out later in the back half of this arc, the true reasons. They did that. The reason, like we all know, they did that because the Ether Nano in the future was so much stronger in magic power compared to their time, and it would give them necessary power to defeat Acnologia. So in order to send the Dragon Slayers into the future, they used the Eclipse Gate. A celestial spirit wizard by the name of Anna worked with another one of Layla Heartfilia to open the gate, and on the day of 7/7/777, that's how the Dragon Slayers got to the future, and their dragons with them being inside of them, that's why they all thought they were gone. Now, Natsu doesn't believe this still, and he tries to kill Zareth, but Happy stops him because he does not want Natsu to die because he's trying to kill Zareth and stuff like that. And it wastes away the last bit of it wastes the last bit of the power Natsu has from Igneo. Now, Demario and Wall, they end up at Hargion Port, and they're starting to fight the forces of Lamia Scale and Mermaid Hill in the north. In the north, Blue Pegasus and Sabretooth run into the forces of one of the Spriggan 12, Bloodmen, and in the east, the 4 Wizard Saints are confronted by God Serena, August, and Jacob Leslio, who is a master in assassination magic. Now, Marin shows up and it looks like he's going to free Brandish, but he actually tries to end up killing Brandish for the way Brandish has been treated her, and he's trying to choke her out and everything. But yeah. Anyways, cutting over to the south, Demario ends up starting fighting Kagura, but easily cuts her with utter ease without to Kagura not even moving. All of a sudden, we covered what Happy and Natsu are doing. Happy sees that for some reason Natsu has passed out weirdly, and he is not conscious. Now we go back to the guild. We find out that Lucy and Kana actually saved Brandish in the nick of time, and saved her from Marin. Now Brandish actually wants to talk to Lucy alone, and we get the understanding between why Brandish knows Lucy. Now we find out that Brandish's mother is named Grammy Mew, and the reason why Brandish is so upset at Lucy is we find out that, well, guess what? Apparently Layla Hartfilia, Lucy's mother, killed Grammy Mew, an assistant of hers and stuff like that, because she wanted the key of Aquarius back. Now we see Brandish trying to kill Lucy, and say it's only fair if I get revenge. You know, Layla's not alive, but hey, it's only fair if I kill her daughter, right? So yeah, but knocking over some essentially a little, I guess, cup of water, essentially it forces Aquarius out, and Aquarius comes out and tells Brandish everything about the truth. We also find out that Brandish apparently knows our Aquarius and Brandish know each other very well, and that's because of Grammy having her key. Now, Aquarius shows Lucy and Brandish the memories of what truly happened. It started with the plan of Anna and Zeref's plan to send the Dragon Slayers into the future to defeat Acnologia, but they needed a celestial spirit wizard from the future, and Layla was then chosen. She needed the 12 Zodiac keys to open the Eclipse Gate, which we already know that from the events of the Grand Magic Games arc. But the thing is, Grammy was essentially in a different country. I believe they said she was in the country of Alikatasi, which is the Alvarez Empire country, and she never got word of Layla needing her help and everything. Because of this, Layla had to use her own life force to do it, and she suffered serious magic deficiency syndrome, which ended up killing her later on. Now, Grammy ends up blaming herself for not being there when Layla needed her the most, but Layla says it's okay, and she just hopes Lucy and Brandish hope to become friends at some point. On the way, as when Grammy was leaving, Grammy essentially gets impaled by Mordio, or no, not Zordio, the guy who took over Capricorn's body, and he faults Grammy for having Layla being killed, or Layla dying. And essentially, Grammy tells Zordio, listen, spare my daughter, Brandish, because I want her to be friends with Lucy. You can take me out because it's my fault for everything that happened. I'll agree to that. And when obviously Brandish is seeing all this, she gets very emotional. Lucy embraces her and tells Brandish, listen, I want to be friends with you no matter what, which is very nice because it makes sense. And even now in 100 Quest, I do like the banter between the two because they are good friends, you know, deep down, even though they are in different countries and everything. Now all of a sudden Happy comes in with Natsu saying that he's unconscious. Now poorly Yusuka says that Natsu has an anti-ether nano tumor from the overtaxation of magic that he's been using. If not taken care of, he'll die. Brandish ends up shortening that whole thing, and that's how Natsu is a-okay. She ends up going back to her prison cell because she feels like that would be better there. Aquarius ends up telling Lucy, my key is out there and I want you to find it for me. So then I'll be looking forward to seeing you again. And that's Lucy's whole new goal. And that's the number one thing when you especially get into the sequel series. That's the number one thing Lucy's trying to do. And stuff like that. So yeah, I really do like that. That this is the whole new story, you know, Lucy's gonna go with and stuff like that. Now, all the other forces had to retreat because the other forces were getting overpowered, while the four emperors of Ishgar were easily defeated by God Serena. But then all of a sudden, Acnologia shows up, and Godsreen tries to confront him and says, I can easily defeat you. And Acnologia one-shots Godsreen with utter ease. Now, Godsreen is supposed to be one of the strongest wizards, and he gets one-shotted. I'm going to be honest, I did not like the whole standpoint that they one-shotted Godsreen here. At least make Godsreen and Acnologia some semblance of a fight here. Utterly one-shot. Now, I understand, okay, yes, it makes sense. Acnologia should defeat Godsreen because, well, he should defeat him like that. But it's like, did it have to be that damn fast, man? Just one shot? I don't know if I like that decision. I really kind of don't, because it's like, come on, man. Really? So yeah. That's the whole thing there. So yeah. Anyway, we cut over. Now in the meantime, as Acnologia is leaving, he's like, I got 7 more dragons to slay, which is in reference to the 7 remaining dragon slayers. Now Gray actually finds Loxus out. We find out that Loxus still has some Bane particles affecting him from the time of the Tardos arc. Levy also has a talk with Gajil saying that this might be their last fight, but Gajil essentially tells her, like, listen, we're going to make it back to the guild no matter what, which I think is a cute, adorable scene. Now, the next day, Demario actually starts picking a fight with Shelia, but Wendy comes to her aid. Gray and Juvie help Leon. Urza helps Kagura, and Loxus ends up fighting Wall. Jalal and Melody actually show up to assist as well. Now, Wall and Loxus end up fighting each other. And the reason why Loxus is fighting Wall is because he wants to get revenge for what Wall did to the Thunder Legion. Now, Wall isn't really affected by the lightning magic Loxus is dishing out. Also, too, Wall also sees that, well, Luxus's insides are weak because of the Bane particles within him and stuff like that. And what they did to his, essentially his internal organs and stuff like that. And I like this one scene, and essentially that's when he starts making very vicious attacks. Luxus then remembers to a scene back at the Grand Magic Games arc, I would believe, how Mavis told him that, he reminds her of his great-grandfather, Yuri, and that they had the same characteristic. Now, Loxus kind of vehemently disagrees with that whole standpoint, says that they're not alike, but, obviously they're in somewhat alike because of the personality they have and the fact that they'll fight for their friends and everything, and that he's a caring individual. Wall looks to do an Ethereon blast to kill Loxus, but Loxus ends up doing an enchantment he learned from Freed to get rid of the Bane particle stuff, and he ends up using Red Lightning to defeat Wall, which was a pretty dope move. In terms of the Demario fight, Demario, her magic in terms deals with controlling time, and she can essentially stop time. Now, she's trying to do this and kill Wendy, but Wendy and Shelia and Carla are all able to move within the pocket dimension of time. That's because Ultir did it. Now, yes, Ultir is an old woman, but because she used the whole magic she used to turn back time back in the Grand Magic Games arc, her essentially a spatial body, a time-like remnant body of Ultir is in the cracks in the rift in time, or is in this rift in time, and is able to help Wendy and her out and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, essentially, the thing is, Wendy and Shelly have to defeat Demario before Ultir's time is up, because her time is up. It's essentially game over, and they'll all definitely die to Demario. But this is when we see Demario actually use transformation magic to transform herself into the time god. And my god, she's overpowered as shit. She ends up impaling Carla because Carla saw a premonition of Wendy essentially getting hit and potentially dying and essentially dying from it. So she takes the blast, saving Wendy. But Ultir puts her out of the pocket time, the rift, because it will give them time to heal. It will give her time to heal Carla. But Ultir says they need to defeat her quickly, and they do it by Ultir having Shelia access her third origin. it gives, which makes, Shelia use the abilities at the most potential she could have used it in her age. The only detractor to this whole statement is that she would have lost her magic. She would lose the ability to use magic forever, and stuff like that. Wendy's thinking that she has it at first, but no, it was just Wendy was kind of in a way buying time for Shelia to get it, and Shelia ends up using it to defeat Demario. And Shelia has no more magic available to her. Wendy ends up healing Carla, but is very emotional because Shelia has no more magic. Back at the guild hall, Jacob manages to get in and tells them that August messed up with the tracking device of what was going on. He ends up making everybody disappear except for Lucy and Natsu because Horologium essentially wasn't there and protected them from the spatial magic. And the thing is, Jacob essentially was attacking Mavis at this point in time because his magic can actually see ghost spirits, essentially. And remember, this is the ghost spirit of Mavis. So he can actually see Mavis. But Lucy and Natsu end up saving Mavis from getting hit and everything. But essentially, the thing we kind of found out that with Jacob is he doesn't really like lewd things. Like, he doesn't like girls showing cleavage at all. So I guess you can say he's an honorary guy. He's a guy that isn't seduced by lust. But I found a funny scene in a way how Natsu and Lucy ended up being able to help find a way to get the upper hand. Essentially, when Natsu was kind of captured, Natsu and Lucy played off like Natsu's trying to do something dirty to her, which eventually we all know it's going to happen. They're going to do it because they're going to make a child eventually, and stuff like that. But eventually what Lucy does is like, you say you want to kill our friends in your little pocket dimension, but we had two of your comrades in our guild, so you took them as well. Jacob sees it, you're like, oh shit, I gotta take them out. I don't want to kill them as well, because Ember Spriggan will be mad at me. So he takes out Marin and Brandish and releases everybody in Fairy Tale. And this gives time for Lucy to use Gemini to copy Marin's abilities, which essentially makes all spatial magic inept, which means Jacob cannot do anything at all whatsoever. Makarov gives him a tough punch, and Natsu finishes him off with a Fire Dragon King Destruction Fist. And stuff like that. So yeah, they managed to beat Jacob. Now Mavis ends up pulling Kana and takes her down to the basement, and she tells Kana, listen, you need to use fairy glitter on me to be able to destroy my ghost, so then guess what, it will release my real body and I'll be a-okay and stuff like that, and it will free me. Cutting over to Gaja's group. Gaja's group actually sees that Sabretooth and Blue Pegasus group were defeated, and they're being essentially on these stakes as trophies, damn near in like a crucifixion like state, which is kind of freaking like, damn, these guys are freaking fucked up, man, and stuff like that. Now, Jalal, Urza, and Kagura run into Simon, but we actually find out it's an illusion from Nineheart. Nineheart, obviously, we know, is a member of the Spriggan 12. Essentially, you can look into people's memories and big influence in people's lives and bring those people back from the dead. He calls them their corpse of Historia. Urza ends up seeing and confronting Kyoka, Azuma, and Ikaruga, damn near characters we haven't seen in a long ass time, except for Kyoka. Ikaruga has been a character we haven't seen since early stage Fairy Tale. That was Tower of Heaven stuff right there. Gray and Leon seen Or. Wendy and Shelly are confronted by Azo, who is the person Wendy defeated back in the Tardos arc after unlocking her Dragon Force form. Melody is confronted by Zancro. Juvia is confronted by Keys, and Loxus is confronted by Hades. Now, the thing is, what happens is Jalal and Kara get blown off the ship, and the thing is, Kara has a chance to under the water try to save Jalal, and she ends up doing that. And the thing is, she pulls him back to the surface, and she ends up like looking like she was going to leave him to die, but she just gives him CPR and she says, you have to live, mostly in response to the fact that Jalal has to live for Ursa's sake, which I do like the whole standpoint that I love how they give development to the side characters who we haven't seen it much, especially with Kagura eventually just putting her sword down and just saying, you know what, listen, what's done is done. I have to forgive and forget. I have to forgive Jalal. I know what he did is by killing my brother, but he isn't that person anymore. I have to get over these petty emotions and I have to forgive him. I definitely do like that they give the growth to Kagura here, where she's has to realize, Jalal isn't a bad guy. He's a changed man. He understands the wrong of what he did. I have to understand that I can't hold a grudge against somebody this long. I'm gonna have to put that grudge away. And I really do like the development there and stuff like that. Now Urza ends up having some trouble fighting her past foes, but she ends up using her own damn near intimidation because she's sick and tired of this whole stuff and everything, and it's erases the her stores away. Now, Nightheart makes a mention of the fact that, well, her hair looks similar to that of Irene. And the thing is, Jalal ends up defeating Nightheart using a Grand Chariot spell and stuff like that. Meriden, and while you have everybody else overcome their past and everything, I'm not going to go into everything and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, we cover back to the guild. Brandish ends up telling everybody that nobody can combat August because he's the strongest member of the Spriggan 12. Not even Irene Belsarion. The only other person that could probably combat him in strength is probably Irene Belsarion. Now Brandish says since she knows August really well, she can probably convince him to not fight anymore. Now, Mess has his doubts, but Lucy believes in her. Now, Irene actually shows her face and changes the landscape of Mount Zonia to a warm area. Also, Irene is actually from Ishgard, which her two little cohorts, I forgot their names, make a mention. Now, we also see that Bloodman and Larcade actually start fighting some people, and Gajo and the others prepare to fight. Sabretooth get back in the fight, and Gajo starts fighting Bloodman. Irene sends his crime sorcier and the coming Agnologia as well. Now, we cover the Gajo Bloodman fight. Now, while fighting Bloodman, he's essentially, his whole body is made of Bane particles, and anyone who's around him ends up inhaling it. Now Levy helps Gajil because she's worried about him and she's wearing a mask, trying not to worry him and everything. So yeah, now Zarev can sense Irene putting the magic into the landscape, and he's wondering what she's planning. Cutting over to August. August is shocked that Brandish is trying to have him go against Zarev's word. But what happens is Mess does the dumbass idea and ends up putting a memory within Brandish to essentially, for some reason, attack August. And this pisses August off and gives him a reason to say, this is why we need to go to war with you guys and stuff like that. And that's when he goes off apeshit. Now, during the fight with Bloodman, cutting back to that, we find out that Bloodman actually has accesses to the curses of the damn Tartaros Guild. So what the hell? I'm starting to wonder if Bloodman is actually a demon from the Book of Zareth like Larcade was. I would not be shocked because he has the ability to use the curses and he knows the Tartaros Guild. So I would not be shocked if Bloodman is actually a demon from the Book of Zareth. So yeah, and everything. Essentially what happens is Levy's mask falls off, but to no chagrin, she's already coughing up blood because Bane particles can be absorbed through the skin and stuff like that. Essentially, Galjaby kind of absorbs the Bane particles in his system. I guess you could say he becomes an Iron Bane dragon, and he's able to hit Bloodman. He ends up defeating Bloodman, but Bloodman actually pulls him into this whole void, which will take him to the underworld and kill him, essentially. Levy tries to save him, but Lily holds her back. Gajiel essentially tells Levy to live for his sake, because losing her is something he does not want to accept. And he goes on to mention at the standpoint that, he saw Levy in a different light and everything and stuff like that, which is very, very sad. It was one of the most emotional scenes. It still gets me to this day because, it's Gajul essentially proclaiming that he truly does love Levy, of the standpoint, he was a bad guy. And I love all the statement. He's like, he was a dude that did bad stuff. And meeting Levy and getting to know her better changed that person to the point he saw Levy as a person he could spend a life with and have a family with. And when they just have those flashbacks, when they have those moments of Gajul embracing Levy, I'm like, it always hits me because it shows that Gajul's character has really changed. And I really do love the Gali ship, man. It's such a beautiful ship. It's so good. Now, obviously, number one thoughts. What are my thoughts on the bait and switch with the Gajul death? Now, they could have killed Gajul here. It would have been an understandable sacrifice. But honestly, I'm fine with the standpoint that he's still alive, because especially we see when Irene uses her magic to shift the landscape of using the Universe 1 spell. Like, it happened at the same time before Gajul was about to be put into essentially about to be put into the underworld and essentially die. It makes sense. You shift the landscape. Well, guess what? Gajul would find it explains why Gajul's still alive. Listen, the Gajul bait and switch isn't as bad, as I say what other bait and switches are, like Makarov, for example. I think, okay, it's something I can live with. It makes sense too with the fact that Irene's Universe 1 spell kicked in with that and essentially transported him somewhere else. So, yeah, that's the whole thing there and everything. But that was a very emotional moment. Like, it really does hit me hard every time I watch it. I damn near almost tear up because it's Gajul essentially, in his own eyes, thanking Levy for everything she has done for him, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, the thing is, Irene and Acnologia confront each other, and says that, and Irene's like, when Zeref gets the fairy heart, he'll be able to defeat you. And Acnologia's like, so it's just him getting stronger and stuff like that. And Irene's like, yes, but in the meantime, you're not going to get closer to him. So that's when she ends up using the Universe 1 spell and essentially shift the whole landscaping battle and stuff like that. Freaking crazy and everything. So you have all these different members just show up randomly and stuff like that, and everything. We see that Zeref is actually in the Fairy Tale Guild Hall with Mavis, so it's freaking crazy and stuff like that. Mary Jane ends up fighting Irene's little girl minions and stuff like that, but it ends up defeating them using Takeover Alegria. But then gets attacked by Irene in August, but she's later saved by Brandish later on because Brandish closes the fatal wound Mary Jane got, which shows that Brandish is actually the one character within the Alvarez Empire arc that actually is very conflicted with how she feels about this whole war. And she's kind of the whole position. She's kind of the whole character where she's like, I don't want this anymore. I just want this to stop and everything. We also see Larkay Dragneel, which we get as a revelation of his last name, ends up saving Demaria and stuff like that. Like I said, Zeref ends up at the guild hall, and he has Anvil doing a spell that prevents Mavis from thinking straight. And essentially, Mavis, it's taken outside, sees the entire army along with the Alvarez Empire, with the Spriggan 12. And Nineheart actually brought back some of the members of the Spriggan 12 that actually perished and died earlier in the arc, which is like, oh, so they're full power and they damn near got everything they want and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, the Fairy Tale members don't know where to go, but because Mavis isn't thinking of her, Zira actually returns and tells them using telepathy magic to head in the direction where the guild is. Gajul is actually with her as well, which makes Levy happy that he's still alive and everything. And essentially, this half of the Alvarez Empire arc ends off with how, funny enough, the part of where the entire Alvarez Empire starts off with the whole start where Urza's rallying the troops to confront Alvarez. We get that same scene here where they're gonna prosper and get back to the guild and fight anybody they have to save Mavis and get to the guild. So they eventually charge down, they attack the army, they get the backup provided, as well as eventually the thing is, before we get out of here, they are confronted by a revived God Serena, the Histor of God Serena, but Gildart shows up to come in to help because he got the same message from Zira, because only Fairy Tale members heard Zira's cries for help. And as of now, that's where I'm going to end the Alvarez Empire arc review part 1, because I thought it would be nice. Okay, we're going to get into the real true battles going on in the next part. But Yes. The first half I thought was honestly a great start off and things like that. It didn't nearly have as many problems as the back half will have. But I do like the intro and the build up to this arc. And then when it finally gets to that point, I really do enjoy it. But yeah, but other than that, that's kind of it. So yeah, but next week will be the final arc review video of Fairy Tail arc reviews, where we're talking about the back half of the Alvarez Empire arc, which will end off the series as a whole and this series. But other than that, hopefully you guys like the video, so leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts on the Alvarez Empire arc as a whole. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you mixed? And are there some things that would you change and stuff like that, as well as stuff like that? And I'm guessing number one question of the day. What are your thoughts on the Godzilla sacrifice? Do you think he should have died, or you're fine with him being alive? But hit the subscribe button if you want to get more Fairy Tail content, as well as getting up, making sure you're ready for the next arc and final arc review of the series. Well, other than that, I'm the Godfather, guys. Hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day. I know channel this video. Until then, guys, stay safe out there. Peace.